How did the Silver Surfer cartoon end? 1998. Hello guys and welcome back. Some cartoons end with a grand finale while some simply just fade away. But Silver Surfer ended by leaving the entire universe hanging. The series had ended after only 13 episodes, which left many viewers with one of Marvel Animation's biggest cliffhangers. The cancellation was not caused by poor ratings, but by Marvel Entertainment's financial collapse during its bankruptcy. In addition to that, the Marvel-Saban rights dispute had also contributed to the show not being able to continue. The final episode of the series, which was The End of Eternity, never even reached its intended continuation. Can you imagine that? Even though the story never returned, Larry Brody later wrote an episode 14 that actually described how the show was meant to continue. This actually made it clear that this was not canon, but an afterlife curiosity that fans still happen to talk about today. And today I'll be explaining to you both the in-universe and the real-world reasons why the show had stopped. So without any further ado, let's begin. A cosmic cartoon that took Kirby seriously. The main reason why fans still remember Silver Surfer is because they weren't trying to be every other cartoon. In fact, they were so much more than everything else we have seen Marvel come up with in the late 90s. Larry Brody, who was the developer, didn't really want to make a typical action cartoon when the series premiered on Fox Kids in February 1998. Instead, he wanted to bring Marvel's strange and philosophical stories of the universe to Saturday morning television. And even the visuals reflected that goal, as hand-drawn animation was blended with computer-generated imagery to recreate the bold and surreal worlds Jack Kirby had imagined decades earlier. The series actually stayed loyal to his comic book origin rather than just reinventing Silver Surfer for the younger audience. But the thing that actually separated this series from any other Marvel series was how rooted it was in Marvel's cosmic mythology. Instead of just focusing on Earthbound superheroes, the series explored characters like Thanos, Uatu the Watcher, Ego the Living Planet, and even the long-running conflict between the Kree and Skrull empires. The writer actually trusted kids to follow stories about destiny, morality, and free will, instead of just trying to simplify Marvel's universe for them. And this approach was actually envisioned by Larry Brody since the very beginning of the show. "I wanted to create a show for the thinking fan," says Larry. Non-stop action or good versus evil stories were already so common. So Silver Surfer explored philosophical ideas about sacrifice, identity, morality, destiny, and humanity's place in an unimaginably vast universe, just like Larry wanted the show to turn out. "13 episodes, one growing cosmic war." Of course, having an ambitious video was only half of the challenge. The series still was in desperate need of a story that was capable of just living up to those ideas, and over the course of its 13 episodes, that was exactly what it had started to build. So, unlike many Saturday morning cartoons of that era, Silver Surfer didn't completely reset itself at the end of every episode. Characters did remember previous episodes, relationships did evolve, and the universe itself felt like it was constantly changing. After Silver Surfer escaped from Galactus, his problems weren't really over. Even though he was free now, he continued to feel guilty. Because as Galactus's herald, he helped Galactus find countless planets to consume, and he was not able to forget the destruction he had been a part of. So now, whenever he visited a new planet, it reminded him of all the innocents he helped to destroy. And due to that guilt, his goal wasn't to get revenge or become more powerful. His goal was to make up for all those mistakes. So instead of using his powers to help destroy planets like he once did, he now used those same powers to save people, protect planets, and help anyone in danger. And as we look further, the series also introduced allies who helped in shaping Norrin's journey, and none proved to be more influential than Nova, unlike many of the cosmic beings that he encountered. Norrin thought that after everything he had done for Galactus, he had become too guilty or too broken to become a good person again. But Nova helped him change his perspective on this, and their growing friendship became one of the most emotional parts of the series. The show wasn't saying that Norrin became a better person because of his powers, it tried to say that he became a better person because of the better choices that he was making. As Norrin traveled through space, the audience kept discovering more and more of Marvel's universe. Every few episodes there were either new planets, new races, or new characters, and that never made the story feel small. The show also introduced different alien civilizations like the Skrulls and the Kree, with each having its own history, goals, and problems. Whenever Norrin met a new civilization, the audience learned more about how this universe worked, and the show kept expanding its world. The show didn't make space feel like just another location where fights happened. It actually felt like a real universe where many civilizations already existed and had their own stories. The greatest strength of the show was perhaps how naturally it escalated its story, without making it feel like the series was rushing to tell its story. The story was focused on Norrin first, and then it slowly started introducing much larger problems. The slow, interconnected storytelling also meant that the stakes never stayed the same for long. By the time the season reached its final few episodes, it was clear that the writers were building towards something that was way greater than just another showdown with a known villain. Every piece of the story had been leading to a crisis unlike anything the series had ever faced before, especially one that would ultimately put the fate of the entire universe on the line.
You haven't a chance!
The End of Eternity, the cliffhanger that never resolved. For the entire season, the show kept introducing new characters, planets, races, and conflicts. The story actually kept growing instead of getting smaller, and all of it felt like it was heading towards one big finale. And by the last episode, all those different ideas came together, and people had expectations that the finale would wrap up the story and answer the questions that had been cooking up throughout the season. But that was not what happened. The show stopped midway, right in the most important moment. And that left the viewers wondering what happened next, but sadly, the next episode never came. It was clear in The End of Eternity from the very beginning that this was not just another ordinary adventure, and that the conflict had moved way beyond individual worlds and civilizations, which reached a point where the entire universe was in danger. This was not a battle over one planet or one civilization. This was actually something that Silver Surfer had never faced before, and the danger had grown much bigger, which put the entire universe at risk. Norrin was also no longer trying to save just one group of people. He was just fighting to stop everything from being ruined. And even with the power cosmic, this was a challenge he had never faced before. And then, instead of giving viewers a final moment of victory, the series did something unimaginable for a Saturday morning cartoon. It simply just ended while everything seemed lost. The universe was destroyed, the screen went dark, and the audience was just left with one question that would obviously never be answered on television. What actually happened to Silver Surfer? The biggest problem wasn't that the show had ended at such a peak moment. The problem was that it never answered questions that had cooked up in all the viewers' minds. The viewers never received answers on whether the universe had been saved, who had survived, or what had happened to Silver Surfer after the events of the finale. The show simply just stopped and left all the viewers hanging. For a genre where audiences were usually used to seeing heroes overcome their final challenge, everything getting wrapped up and everyone calling it a day, Silver Surfer surprisingly provided no such ending. They did not even wrap up Norrin Radd's story, and to be honest, that conclusion felt less like a conclusion and more like a continuation. A continuation that viewers were supposed to see in the next episode, but that next episode also never came. And that was actually what made the cliffhanger so memorable, as the episode had spent 13 episodes just building a universe that was filled with characters, conflicts, and unanswered possibilities, all of it for the story to stop at the exact moment at what seemed like its biggest turning point. Viewers were hung up waiting for answers that would never come on screen, which left The End of Eternity as one of the most unusual endings in Marvel's animation history. Why it really stopped. Bankruptcy, not ratings. After leaving viewers with one of the best cliffhangers in Marvel Animation's history, the biggest question that surrounded Silver Surfer was why the story was not allowed to continue. And the answer to that was not because the viewers had stopped caring about the series, which is the case for many cancelled shows where the decline of the audience is the main reason behind their downfall. Silver Surfer was seen in a very positive way during its original run, and the series actually even received a lot of appreciation for its unique and ambitious storytelling. The biggest problem actually arose from the company behind the character. During the late 1990s, Marvel Entertainment Group was actually going through one of the most difficult financial periods in its history. The company faced a huge amount of financial struggles, and those problems affected its ability to continue investing in projects that actually required long-term production costs. For an animated series, especially one as ambitious as Silver Surfer, producing more episodes required a major time commitment, money, and resources. Even if there were still stories to tell, the reality was that continuing production became a task when the company responsible for funding the project was already dealing with its own financial crisis. At the time the show was canceled, news reports and fan sites mentioned that the main reason was Marvel's financial problems, which meant Marvel was going through bankruptcy. And when a company is in financial trouble, it has to cut costs. And producing an animated series was really expensive, hence Silver Surfer was one of those projects that couldn't continue. However, Marvel's financial problems were not the only reason that was connected to the cancellation. Another factor was frequently mentioned, which was the complicated relationship between Marvel and Saban Entertainment, the company that had co-produced the series. As Larry Brody later explained, the bad news is that legal differences between Saban and Marvel brought the series to an abrupt end. While Marvel's financial struggles were the reason most commonly associated with why the production had stopped, the dispute between Marvel and Saban together created another obstacle which held the series back from returning. What made the cancellation of Silver Surfer so frustrating was that the series disappeared at a point when it still had potential. The show had established its own identity, even found an audience that appreciated its approach, and created a storyline that was clearly meant to continue even after its first season. But instead of getting a proper ending, the series came to an end because of reasons that had nothing to do with how well it was performing. The season that was written but never filmed. After watching the finale that Silver Surfer provided to the viewers, many fans had just assumed that the writers of the show never got the chance to figure out what happened next. But that actually wasn't the case. The creative team of the show already knew exactly where the story was going and had an entire second season lined up before the production stopped. And this actually makes the cancellation of the show even more surprising and weird, because the show wasn't unfinished due to a lack of ideas. It was interrupted despite the fact that it had a clear direction. There were a total of 8 scripts that had already been prepared for the second season, and the planned episodes were titled The End of Eternity Part 2, the 2-part Soul Hunter, Rebirth, Battlecry, and the 3-part Down to Earth. And note this. These weren't rough drafts or simple notes. These were actual television scripts that were prepared for production. So now you know how much planning and energy had gone into preparing those scripts. And by the time the scripts were complete, the writers already knew where the story was headed. And this also showed that the creative team weren't only hoping for a second season, they had actively prepared for one. The planned second episode wasn't just going to introduce new adventures, it was also going to continue the most important parts of Norrin Radd's journey. The writers wanted the viewers to know about his homecoming to his home planet, Zenn-La, and continue his story with Shalla-Bal. The viewers could have finally seen Norrin Radd find peace after everything he had gone through, but unfortunately they never got to see them as the season was never made. One of the other exciting ideas planned for Season 2 was a 3-part story which was called Down to Earth. This would have brought Silver Surfer back to Earth after he spent most of the series traveling through space. The storyline was also expected to feature the Fantastic Four, which would also give the viewers a chance to see Silver Surfer interact with some of Marvel's most well-known heroes. And this was also another sign that the writers wanted to expand the series even further by connecting its cosmic adventures with the wider Marvel universe. Despite all the effort that was put into the preparation of all of these, none of these scripts were ever produced. No voice recording began, no animation was complete, and these scripts just remained on paper, becoming one of the biggest what-ifs in Marvel animation.
Scourge of the universe! You do what you must.
The unofficial ending nobody asked permission for. Television shows that are cancelled usually leave the viewers unaware about what could have happened next, but Silver Surfer left the viewers in a very awkward position. Although the animated series never returned, the creators of the show actually revealed part of the story that had been left behind. And that meant, unlike most television shows where the viewers can only imagine what would happen next, fans were actually given a glimpse here of what could have been. even if it never appeared on their screen. Larry Brody didn't just upload production notes or a rough outline. He had instead published a complete screenplay which fans usually refer to as the 14th episode. And that was a professional television script which contained descriptions, dialogues, and directions that would have been written right before production. The screenplay itself was such an unusual piece of animation history, as most scripts are rarely made public after a show's cancellation. In most cases, they're just kept in archives and fans never get to see what happened. But Silver Surfer was different and unusual because viewers could actually read the material that was originally intended by the series to put on screens, and it also offered a rare behind-the-scenes look at the creative process. The script was picked up immediately after the events of The End of Eternity, and it showed what would have happened next, which allowed the fans to answer questions that they had cooked up in their mind after the biggest question that was left by the finale. What made the script even more interesting was that it was never meant to be one final ending for all the unresolved questions. It was written in a way that was meant to continue, as though the show had never been cancelled. It did answer the questions that were left by the finale, but it also opened doors for stories that were meant to come next. However, we cannot really take the script to be the official ending for the series, as it was never officially released by Marvel or aired on television. It simply just showed Larry Brody's version of how the story was meant to continue. So while it gave an idea of how the show was meant to continue to the fans, it doesn't replace the ending that was actually shown on television. And due to all of this, the conversations about Silver Surfer go beyond the 13 episodes that actually aired on television, and eventually reach Larry Brody's unofficial script. In the end, Larry Brody's screenplay didn't change how Silver Surfer actually ended. The series still remains concluded with The End of Eternity, just with a hint of what would have been.
You must hurry, Silver Surfer. Even eternity has almost run out of time.
Afterlife, Rediscovery on DVD, and streaming. Even though the series had disappeared from the television screen, that didn't mean it had disappeared forever. For many years, the series was really difficult to find, which meant that an entire generation of Marvel fans had either forgotten about it or never even knew about its existence. And due to this absence from television, the series turned into one of Marvel Animation's lesser-known series. But then, in 2009, the complete 13-episode series was finally released on DVD. And for the first time since the original broadcast, fans did not have to rely on some old television recording or incomplete upload. And this helped preserve the series for longtime fans, while it also was introduced to the people who had missed it during its original run. More recently, all 13 episodes even became available on Disney+, and streaming made it far easier to discover. So instead of just being remembered by fans who had watched it on Fox Kids in 1998, the show became available to the newer Marvel audiences, who liked exploring the company's older animated history. The internet has also played a huge role in keeping Silver Surfer alive. As time passed, more people started talking about the show online. People made YouTube videos, animation reviews, and even articles about it. And because of these, many people discovered Silver Surfer for the first time, even though they had never watched it when it had originally aired. Most of those reviews described Silver Surfer as one of Marvel's most underrated series, which meant that a lot of viewers felt that the show received very little recognition and appreciation that it had deserved to receive. People didn't just talk about the unfinished ending. The conversations actually went on way beyond that. The reviewers often also praised things such as the animation style and how the show talked about bigger ideas, such as sacrifice, morality, and redemption instead of just focusing on action. Over time, more and more people started thinking of Silver Surfer as a hidden gem, a really good show that enough people didn't seem to know about. While the show never received the continuation it deserved, it received something that many canceled shows almost do not, and that was a second audience. Years after it ended, new people started watching and appreciating it. And just like that, instead of being forgotten, it found a whole new group of fans. And that too, with greater reputation and recognition this time.
The end is almost here!
Did Silver Surfer get the ending it deserved? The ending should not always define how a story is to be remembered. Sometimes, if the conversations are still on even after the show's end, it is just as important. Silver Surfer was one of those rare shows where the discussions about its conclusion had lasted far longer than the show's original run. Some fans wanted answers to the story's biggest questions, while others just wanted to see the complete creative vision brought to life through animation. But the difference was in expectations, which is actually why opinions on the show's ending vary even today. Some viewers felt that knowing the writer's intentions was enough to appreciate the series, while others felt that a screenplay could never replace the actual ending of the story. And that put Silver Surfer in a very unique position, as each fan had their own idea to what counts as a proper conclusion. Ironically, the show's unfinished ending became one of the most defining parts of it. Because today, when people look back, they don't just remember the characters or its cosmic adventures. They also look back at the fact that the show never received a proper conclusion. But rather than just letting it die that way, the unanswered ending has kept it alive in discussions for years. New viewers continue discovering the series, while old ones keep revisiting it. And the question of how it should have ended still remains one of the biggest reasons people still talk about Silver Surfer today. So in the end, the real question isn't if Silver Surfer had an ending. It is whether the one the fans have is enough. Is Larry Brody's unofficial screenplay enough to appreciate the journey the creators originally had in mind? Or does a series that was this ambitious still deserve the chance to receive a proper ending that it never got? That is probably a question every fan will have different answers for. To summarize everything we've discussed above, Silver Surfer doesn't have an end. Instead of concluding this journey with a final success or bidding goodbye, the show simply stopped in mid-action. However, it turned out that this very act of stopping created a great amount of intrigue about what could happen next. Thanks to the unproduced scripts from Season 2 and the unofficial screenplay by Larry Brody, fans had a peek at how the series could have evolved further. Thanks to those DVD and streaming releases, nobody forgot about the 1998 TV show. Also, due to its ambitious storytelling, even without a full conclusion, it was able to be remembered forever. Now, I want to ask, do you think that Marvel should come back and give a complete ending to their unluckiest series of 1998? Or maybe is it the lack of completion which made the unforgettable character? Well, comment down your thoughts on the same below, and I'll see you in the next one.